looking at this run sheet of things we've seen, I'm thinking the first thing we got to talk about, trying to stay too spoiler free because I know it's only been out a few days,
and I still haven't seen it yet.
Is the Spider-Man. Myself, Jack, and Garrett have all seen the new Spider-Man, No Way Home. And it's interesting because I've seen some takes where like people really aren't liking it. I've seen some takes where people are completely bowled over by it. I know I had a lot of fun watching this movie, and it's probably because like maybe every 90 seconds to 2 minutes the the fan service dopamine receptors are being pummeled to bits. But you know what? Sometimes I'm just here for that. And kind of between that and how much I've been enjoying Hawkeye, I kind of just like, I was in a good mood for this and I really enjoyed that. And it was also the first film I'd been to since before the pandemic that like huge crowds of people in the cinema were audibly reacting to things, which is like, I don't think I'd had that since Endgame. But what did you guys think of it? Jack, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, my screening, there were probably like 10 cheering out loud moments in it. It was awesome. Just felt like it just felt like a really great positive atmosphere, and like you said, it is very fan servicey. I mean, I'm going to try my best to not say anything that gives anything
it's
away.
hard to construct complete sentences about this film without spoiling stuff.
It really is, because the best moments are the things that you feel like you want to spoil. But it kind of sets up, so the premise that you've kind of seen from the trailer and the bits and pieces is set up pretty early in the movie, and that's kind of the first half of the movie, and then for reasons they show you pretty much nothing from the back half of this movie, right? Yeah. And the back half of this movie kicks ass. It is just moment after moment of just really fun, awesome stuff, like really well delivered. And, you know, it is very much like, hey, remember this thing? Yeah, we're going to pay this off now, or hey, we're going to reference this, or whatever. So I could see how people that kind of haven't watched any Spider-Man movies or, you know, aren't invested in the MCU would watch this movie and just think, well, the content here is pathetic. Like, it's kind of like, you know, where, you know, maybe you go out with your missus or whatever in our work lot, and they're all talking about stories from work, and everyone's enjoying the hell out of it, and you're sat there like, I don't know any of these stories, I don't know any of these people, but everyone's laughing, so I'm just going to smile and nod along. And then you come home and she's like, oh, that was a great evening, and in my head I'm just like, oh man, I was so bored, I didn't really know what was going on, and I just kind of felt generally alienated, and then I put my headphones in and listened to Nine Inch Nails. No, but yeah, it's kind of like that. I feel like that's the only way that you wouldn't maybe enjoy it, is if you had no general connection and you hadn't really had any previous Spider-Man or MCU kind of takes or feelings.
Or I guess if you're one of the people that's on the super burnt out end of the scale, from the all-encompassing marvelness of everything.
And I don't blame those people either, because it's just been like a hammer blow of content. Now we've got
since
all the
2008.
Yeah, but now we've got all the TV shows. It's like if you do something 4 times a year, that might be too much for some people. So if we're getting 4 Marvel movies a year, that's probably, some people, they're probably all like, oh, that's exhausting. But then if you're paid as somebody to cover, you know, all of the Marvel content, and you're paid to cover all of the TV shows, you know, there's one that drops like every 8 weeks now or whatever it is, and you've got all of that, as well as having to sit through the fucking Eternals again, or so. you can see why it would grate on people.
That's what I was going to say as well, that like not only is it like the TV stuff, but normally you get like the 3 Marvel movies a year, but this is like the 3rd one since August.
Yeah, they've been coming thick and fast.
And that's not including if you went to see like the Suicide Squad and stuff like that, and Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and different other comic book properties. I suppose that's where I'll pass over to Garrett, because like myself and Jack, you know, we kind of know each other's where our exhaustion levels are with Marvel. Like, how have you been with the 2021 content? Like, is it doing anything for you? And then going into Spider-Man, how was that experience?
Like, I'm probably one of those people who's not quite burnt out, but I am bordering on it. Like, I like WandaVision a lot. I liked Loki a lot. I thought Falcon and Winter Soldier was kind of bad. And I think Hawkeye's pretty good. It's like, for me, like perfectly acceptable, enjoyable TV, but nothing special.
Yeah.
And I haven't liked most of the movies, like Black Widow, ugh. Eternals, ugh. So, and like even this very film I was burned out on because of just like the relentless marketing campaign and speculation that has been going on for what feels like 2 years now. It's every day. It's like, oh, look at this new screenshot from the new Spider-Man movie. It's like, no, I just want to see the movie. I'm excited for this movie. Just let me see the movie.
It also gave me some, I don't know if you were the same, Garrett, but it gave me like some anxiety going into it because like I feel the ones that Marvel like over egg the advertisement on are the ones I usually like less. You know, they were really overdoing it on Eternals, for example. So when they were really bombarding people for months with, you know, Spider-Man is coming, and for ages it was like, we're not telling you when, but it is coming. I was coming into it going, God, this might be bad.
Yeah, and like every week there's a new Tom Holland interview that's like, this is the biggest movie you've ever seen in the history of existence. And I'm like I'm excited for this movie. I was excited going in just based on the premise of the movie, but like the marketing of the movie almost made me resent it. But like, I like this. I don't think it's a good movie. Like, it is one of those movies that if you like really scratched at the surface of like the characterization and the plot and the story and like the actual mechanics of it as a piece of filmmaking, it's probably not great, which is the reason I think if people have no connection to these characters and they go in to just watch this as a Spider-Man story that they have no like investment in, they will probably, there's nothing there for them, honestly. And like, if you're anybody else, there's everything there in this movie for you. So you're just like sitting there being like, oh geez, it's Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe, and it's like the two Raimi villains bouncing off each other. It's like, oh, look at these people in this movie talking to each other, but they died in their other movies, so they could never talk to each other. So like all that stuff is really, really cool. There was a little bit of me watching it, like every time there wasn't an old character on the screen, part of my brain was like, I don't want to hang out with Zendaya for another scene. I just want Alfred Molina chewing scenery. But yeah, I think this movie will give exactly what people want from it. Like that's what the movie is designed to do.
It's kind of like a much better executed idea of the what if premise. Do you know what I mean? Because like what it is, it's fodder for one, fan service, and two, like people having the discussion on the way out of the cinema is like, does this mean, you know, we can do this in another movie? You know, how cool was this thing? Did you remember that reference to this? And stuff like that. And yeah, you know, you're dead right. Like when you're talking about it not being a very good actual film, I think of Barry had a tweet there recently where it's like, with the combined box office of these Spider-Man films, John Watts is his name, isn't it? Is like bordering on being one of the most prolific directors of his generation, and the only thing you can nail down about the guy's directorial style is usually has Spider-Man in his films.
Even the fact that you're like, that's his name, right? This dude has directed three of the biggest movies, and like this movie is going to be humongous. It's already like the box office figures over the first weekend, which I think is a combination of like spoiler fear and probably a little bit of fear of like maybe cinemas will close before I have a chance to see it, so let's all rush out and see it in the next weekend. But like it's going to be a humongous movie, and like like what's his visual aesthetic? It's just like Marvel movie, I guess. That's like the visual aesthetic of this movie. It's Marvel.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I was thankful for of the Marvel tropes that like I didn't see as much in this is that kind of like washed out color palette they've all started to have, like uniform between them all. I felt like colors popped a bit more than they have in the last few of these, particularly like I was so disappointed when I went to see Eternals that like that's a movie that has like a bunch of freaky characters doing weird shit. I want my colors to pop in that movie and to have like rich textures that I can enjoy looking at, and it fucking did nothing for me.
But I think like if you watch the other John Watts directed Spider-Man movies, they all kind of do have that color palette of like popping out. Like, you know, for the first one when he's part of the it's like the is it like a quiz team, or I can't remember what they are, like a academics team, and they're wearing like the bright yellow jackets and stuff. So he's got like the bright yellow jacket with like the bright red and blue Spider-Man costume kind of like mixed together, and he's wearing it and stuff. So like those things all jump out, and I think visually that the style is almost more kid friendly than the other ones. Like, and you can tell like how much time they spend on the credits with like the notebooks and the drawings and stuff like that. So the general aesthetic of the thing is really, really cool, the way they lay it out. But you're so right on Eternals. Like, it was grim to look at. It felt like that phase of the sort of, you know, Gears of War era of games where everything was like brown and grey.
And taking somebody in Chloe Zhao who had literally just won an Academy Award for directing and just squashing any hint of like creative freedom out of that movie is just like depressing.
Yeah, and she made a very very different movie to that. To be the one that like kind of, you know, got her the Oscar, and it just seemed like an odd choice. But it's like they kind of take people, don't they, when they're kind of young and not commanding that huge of a fee, which is why you'll never see like a massive name director really pick up the reins on any Marvel movie, because they just want I
mean, we are leading into a Sam Raimi Doctor Strange, but yeah, I get, like, generally speaking, you are dead right.
We did have Kenneth Branagh doing Thor originally.
Yes, Kenneth Branagh.
Yes, but that was, I think, so Kenneth Branagh, his thing with it, at that point, there wasn't really an MCU, was there? So they didn't have, they were trying to kick it off, and they were giving the creative control to the creator at that point, to the director.
Yeah, because they had already signed Edgar Wright at that point for the long gestating Ant-Man he got kicked off of.
And then as they sort of started to colour in how they wanted to expand the MCU and how they wanted to tie everything together, you started seeing less creative control for the directors and more of a rigid sort of Marvel structure, cookie cutter of how the films were going to roll.
Can I say as well, just to direct us back onto Spider-Man, something we can say, because it's in all the trailers.
Somebody got mad at me on Twitter this week, Dave, for saying like there's returning characters in this movie. It's like there's 5 of them in the trailer. For
God's sake, on the poster as well. Well, we'll just have to draw the ire of those pedants.
Like even there, what I was saying is like, oh, 2 characters that are in the trailer talk to each other, like Alfred and Molina and Willem Dafoe. It's like, well, people get mad at me for that. It's like these 2 people who have been advertised for this movie are in the movie and at one stage share scenes with one another. That is probably like too much for some people, which is bizarre.
By the way, how great was crazy Willem Dafoe?
Oh, well, this is the best. He's the best.
This is what I was going to say. The film vindicates all the people who have been saying for many, many years that Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina are 2 of the best comic book villains of the modern age.
Oh, yeah. Without question, I would say.
You're on mute, Mark.
Yeah, I've just realised that. Can I just add to that? Because I watched the Lighthouse last weekend, and he's borderline like a comic book villain in that, like, just chewing scenery in ways that...
That's what he does,
You know, it's incredible. Like, and Robert Pattinson was pretty good in that as well, but fuck me, Willem Dafoe.
But you get the range of Willem Dafoe in this movie, like, so you get, like, the sort of confused, like, you know, really sort of naked to his own mortality, Norman Osborn, versus the Green Goblin, like, that you get in the original Spider-Man movies. Obviously, again, it's not giving anything away, because it's like that's the character, right? So he's not going to change up how he's portrayed a character from a previous movie, and he really doesn't. But you spend so long with like the maudlin Norman Osborn, right? So when the switch eventually flips, again, not giving anything away, and you get crazy Willem Dafoe back, it's just one of many moments in the film, and one that I can actually reference that I popped huge for, as when he does his heel turn in an apartment building somewhere.
Can I just say as well that, like, you want to talk about like facially expressive actors? Like, I mean, it's S tier stuff from Big Willem, and huge respect to the man as well. That there was a thing going around on Twitter this week from one of his interviews that apparently he absolutely insisted that he would only return to the role at some 62 years of age if he could do his stunts himself.
Yep. And there is one of the stunts that he does in this movie that is incredibly pro wrestling friendly, and I will say no more.
There's at least 3 actual pro wrestling high spots.
Yep.
There's a fight scene that is literally just pro wrestling high spots, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And look, all I'm just going to say is that, Arn Anderson maybe has a legal case against the makers of Spider-Man for gimmick infringement.
Harley Race as well, I think.
And not just because people had guns in the movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll move on from Spider-Man because I think we've danced around the non-spoilery stuff as much as we can.
Recommend. Thumbs up, right?
Yeah, big recommend. I think you're going to have a hoot. Like, it's a great kind of popcorn cinema experience. Might be the last one you get for a little while, depending on where you live. Who knows?
We're all going to desperately get in to see Matrix, and then it's fine. You can shut it down until February then, once we all get to see Matrix.
Oh, Garrett, as soon as they started announcing the curfew, I was like, right, I'm booking the earliest showing of Matrix Resurrections next week I can find, because I know everybody else is going to be thinking that.